Good evening. It is Wednesday, August 27th, 2025, and a terribly, terribly sad day. Unless you've been working all day and none of your colleagues told you, there was a school shooting, and may I be more specific, a church shooting around 8:30 this morning in Minneapolis, Minnesota, at Annunciation Church and School. The young kids from pre-K up until 8th grade were on the right side of the church, while parents and other worshipers were on the left side of the church. It happened pretty quickly when Mass was about to begin because families were still coming in. Massive, massive gunfire shattering the windows. Teachers dove on children, older children dove on younger children. But unfortunately, two little children, two blessed angels, 8 and 10, lost their lives, 14 others injured, and 3 adults. The coward shooter shot himself in the head in the parking lot. Why would somebody do anything like that? Everybody was pretty good in the beginning not to theorize what might be the motive, and we didn't have to wait long. This shooter, Robin Westman, 23 years old, and can I tell you, it's a Robert. His name is really Robert Westman. He applied legally to have it changed, but it's a man. And he's a transgender, and he left a manifesto, and he left videos. It was a tragic scene. They must have practiced these kind of drills because they knew where to go. They had a particular room to go to count and make sure who they have. And here you see on the screen pictures of the manifesto. Quite disturbing. Before we get into a little bit about that, I want to remind you that in 2023, there was another school shooting in another Christian school. This one happened to be Catholic, the one today, but a Christian school, Covenant School. Audrey Hale, 28, really a man, killed 3 children and 3 adults at that particular school. And there was a manifesto, and they refused to put it out there. And everybody was very suspect because remember, there's these groups that push this ideology, and we're not getting the right mental care for these young people. They're being told that the right is after them. No, I don't want to divert too much, but the right just don't want men in girls' sports. So that's over there. No one's out to get these people. We love all people. We want them to get the right mental health care. But anyways, this man, Robert Weston, planned this. 2 of the church doors were barricaded with boards so they couldn't get out. He seemed to take joy in this as well. I'm going to show you in clip 5 some of the video he left behind.
Bang. I'm the woker, baby. Why so curious? Where's your God now?
The clip has been taken down by the FBI, but many people downloaded it before. It's approximately 11 minutes long. It talks about killing President Donald Trump, on like this gas canister. It's against Jews on there. And then you saw at the opening of that clip a picture of Jesus Christ in the midst of a target practice. This was definitely premeditated. Of course, our president, along with everybody, is heartbroken over this tragic loss. And if you look at clip number 2, President Trump did order the state flags at half-mast. We use that as a sign of mourning, a sign of respect, letting people know that something really tragic happened in our country. Well, I have a great guest, one of my favorite guests, Michael Hitchborn, with me today, founder and leader of the Lepanto Institute. Michael, how are you?
As the father of 8 children, I have to say I'm actually struggling with this one quite a bit.
I can imagine. As a healthcare professional, I look at it in a lot of different ways. Obviously, I have empathy for everybody involved, but I also look at causes, what we can do to prevent it. I typically, just talking for myself, don't go to gun laws. And I'll tell you why I don't necessarily go there straight away. Chicago has some of the strictest gun laws, and I don't know how many people were killed this year, but a lot. A lot of people were killed with gun violence. Actually, for the last 10 to 15 years in Chicago, every weekend, about 15 to 50 people get shot and some killed every weekend. And they have very, very strict gun laws. In Minnesota, happens to have some pretty strict gun laws. So I'm a problem solver. I want to come out with solutions. So I don't go there right away. What I go to is, this is now our second school shooting with transgenders. And as a child of God, I don't hate transgenders, not in the least bit. I love them. I am angry because I feel the mental health industry and the medical industry, and sometimes the parents, have failed these children. We've never seen an explosion of mental illness the way we did in the last 4 years. And transgenderism exploded. And those kids who were lonely, sad, confused, if they would say they were the opposite sex, they were praised. But then here came the rhetoric when we wanted men out of girls' sports, which is perfectly legitimate. Some of the activist group were whispering already in children who are mentally ill, whispering in their ears, they're out to get you. They want to commit genocide. They're totally against you, which isn't true. How do we get past this, Michael?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned gun control laws and you mentioned mental health. And one of the so-called common sense gun control laws that are on the books is that there has to be a background check for everybody who purchases a firearm. And that background check includes a check for certain psychological dispositions or psychological problems in the background. So somebody who has a history of mental illness is not supposed to be or they're supposed to be flagged as part of the red flag laws that would prohibit or slow down such an individual's ability to obtain a firearm. However, the book on psychology put out by the American Psychological Association removed homosexuality, transgenderism, and various other such iterations. They removed them from the index of psychological illnesses. And what we have, as you pointed out, is an explosion of people identifying as transgender, people identifying as homosexual, but they're not being identified properly as having a mental illness or at least a psychosis that they're dealing with. And we do know, at least from history, that transgenderism has violence at the very heart of it. I want to read to you something. This comes from Flavius Josephus, an historian from the time of Christ. And he wrote about the siege of Jerusalem. This is what he wrote, what was happening in Jerusalem at the time that the Roman centurions were laying siege to it. He said, "With their insatiable hunger for loot, they ransacked the houses of the wealthy, murdered men and violated women for sport. They guzzled their loot, washed down with blood for mere satiety. They shamefully gave themselves up to effeminate practices, plaiting their hair and putting on women's clothes, drenching themselves with perfumes and painting their eyelids to make themselves attractive. They copied not merely the dress, but also the passions of women, devising in their excess of licentiousness unlawful pleasures in which they wallowed as in a brothel. Thus, they entirely polluted the city with their foul practices. Yet, though they wore women's faces, their hands were murderous. They would approach with mincing steps, and whipping out swords from under their dyed cloaks, they would impale passers-by." So here we have an historian's depiction of what was going on at the siege of Jerusalem, where people who were transgender, they were cross-dressing and engaging in sodomitical behavior, were murderous, and they were practicing random acts of violence on people as they walked by. How can we look at this and say that this is not something that is precedented by antiquity? We know exactly what this kind of mentality does, and it is leading to violence.
Yes. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. That was quite profound. In a recent show, I did something on from a group called Transition Justice. And I did play only a few of these young people who felt coerced. Some were given hormones as young as 12 years old, having breasts removed at 13 years old, and they're suffering now. They really want to be in their birth body. They were just going through an incredible time, but their stories are so sad, how their teachers pushed them. The psychiatrist told their parents, "Oh, it's better to have," and pardon my language, "a dickless child than one that's dead." So there was this mantra that went around on this pseudoscience poll that was done that most transgender kids are suicidal. That's not necessarily true. But the healthcare world used that sometimes to coerce the patient and the family. And then they changed the language to, I think it's mutilation on a minor and should not be allowed. And President Trump did sign an executive order, but they called it gender affirming care.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
You know, I listened to an old school psychologist, and they were so right on. They're not new wave. They don't get their calling from a party, a political party. They looked at science and things that have worked in the past. When someone comes in with gender dysmorphia, you start using cognitive therapy, especially if they're a minor. You let them know they're loved just the way they are. And other children get confused. And you work on things to get them out of that rut and get them moving towards being productive. And they'll grow out of it, is basically what she said. And that's what we're seeing with these kids who did transition surgically and now regret it. But they were so young, Michael. They were so young to have that done to them. And I'm angry. I'm angry at the field that I have been in for over 30 years, have done this to children. And one of them was speaking about, she didn't even go, it could have been a he, go to the psychologist because she was feeling like the opposite sex. She was feeling, because she was feeling isolated and lonely. But it was the psychologist who said, "Oh, that means you want to be a boy."
Yep.
Okay. Like, where did that come from? And you're saying, yes, so you've heard this as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, this goes way back. I mean, 1969, there was a memo that was produced. It's called the Jaffe Memo. It was produced by the president of Planned Parenthood at the time. And the title of this memo was "Proposed Measures to Reduce Fertility by Universality or Selectively of impact in the US. And under this section called Universal Impact Social Constraints, the proposed measures included restructuring the family and encouraging increased homosexuality. So what they were saying here, and this also goes in addition to, pro-contraception and pro-abortion measures, but everything that's been going on with the transgender movement and this, they're giving these kids these hormones, but you have to remember the hormone treatments that they're giving them and the transition treatments that they give them are sterilants. So all of this is predicated on the idea of population control. They're trying to reduce the population of this country and of the world by getting kids to start thinking, if you can't get them contracepting, you might as well get them to change their minds on who they actually are. And it's causing this horrific mental health crisis in this country. They don't know who they are. They have no self-identity. And what happens when you break the psyche to such a degree? They're going to lash out in violence. You've done violence to their minds. Now they're going to do violence to society. It's a natural consequence.
Absolutely. And the politicians are just as bad. Governor Walz, when he was running as vice president with Kamala Harris, he talked about how his state, any minor could come to his state and they wouldn't tell the parents. Are you kidding me? You're going to let a minor come into your state, mutilate that child, mutilate them through surgery and not tell the parent? It's a warpness. I want to go to this clip 9 with Governor Walz.
Minnesota ranks the highest per capita for being a safe haven for transgender individuals in Minnesota. And can I just say, we can talk about economic growth and feeding children and growing the economy and creating jobs simultaneously with talking about everybody's human rights matters, and we shouldn't be demonizing that. You can do both.
What's funny, it's all language, right? In propaganda and manipulation. Of course, we will all want human rights and dignity. But to me, giving dignity to those children is helping their mental illness, helping them get better. Like, it frustrates me because there's this pointing going on in our nation, and it is meant to cause chaos and to cause that division. Now, you talked about the theory of population control, which was very legitimate. There's different things going on as well. There's the Marxism along with it, that the government gets all control. But it just really, really bothers me. So I just want to go to another one from the lieutenant governor from Minnesota. I think might be clip 11 or 12.
Because let's be clear, this is life-affirming and life-saving healthcare. When our children tell us who they are, it is our job as grown-ups to listen and to believe them. That's what it means to be a good parent.
I apologize. The audio track was off a little bit, but again, that's very manipulative language. Yes, you want to understand their feelings, acknowledge them, but a parent, a leader, a politician, healthcare needs to get them to optimal health, and that includes optimal mental health. Right. And hey, who is the Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn? Mm-hmm. You know what? He did it at 50 years old, 60 years old. I really don't have anything to say about that. Some people disagree with me, but he's an adult. But my beef is with anybody under 21 years old. I've seen too many children forever harmed by what we did to them.
Well, we have to remember the trans movement has its roots in the very beginning of the revolution against God, going all the way back to Lucifer. Lucifer's rebellion against God started with, and I want to read to you, this comes from Isaiah 14, where the prophet is talking about Lucifer. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, who didst rise in the morning? How art thou fallen to the earth, that didst wound nations? And thou saidst in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit in the mountain of the covenant in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the height of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Now, this is a very interesting statement, because for Lucifer to say, I will be like, it's a statement of becoming. I will become something that I am not. It's a statement of transition. So Lucifer gets tossed out of heaven, and what does he do? He goes to the Garden of Eden, and he says to Eve, did God really say that you can't eat any of the fruit in the garden? So he lies in the beginning. And what does Eve say? She says, no, we can eat anything we want. We just can't eat anything from that tree. And then she says, of course, if we do that, we'll die the death. And Lucifer then says, you're not going to die. Your eyes will be opened, and you will become like gods, plural. So what he's saying to Eve is that you will become something that you're not. You can transition your nature. You can change your nature to something else. And he said, you will become like gods, meaning like one of us, knowing that she was already created in the image and likeness of God. He couldn't lie to her on that. So he said, you'll become something else. And so she bought into that lie. And if you follow the trends all through history, everything that is touched on Satanism and Luciferian ideologies, the arcane, you get this sense of transition. Alchemy wanted to transmute mineral from one thing to another, so you can transmute lead into gold. You get this idea of chimeras, where you can have some animal that's got the characteristics of another animal. You have evolution, saying that you can make one creature into another. Then you get transgenderism, saying that man can be woman. And then on top of that, you get transhumanism, which says that man can transcend his nature to something higher. He can download his consciousness into a computer. This whole entire movement is predicated on the first rebellion against God, which is that Lucifer said, I can become something that I'm not. I will be like the Most High.
Wow. I want to show you the picture of evil here. This is Robert Westman, who now goes by Robin Westman. He looks a little crazy, and he premeditated taking the lives of young people. The FBI is now investigating whether this is a hate crime against Catholics. We had seen in the Biden administration, the FBI was weaponized to go after people who went to Latin Mass. I never heard of anything so crazy, but this is something serious. This is, to me, a hate crime. His manifesto, his writings all look that he hated Catholics. He did go to that school, it looks like, for a year. His mom worked there for several years, but he really did hate God, hate Jesus. He hated Jews. I think deep down he probably hated himself, and he didn't get the right mental health care. Now, contrast, we just saw what evil looks like. I want to show you a precious picture of the children that was taken just yesterday at Annunciation School. They are just all smiles and so happy to be back. It was their first day. And as normal for them at this particular school, every Wednesday they go to Mass. And I love it that they invite the parents and other worshipers to join in on that Mass every Wednesday. I want to share with you this beautiful story of what a young man said. And I may forget what, oh, here it is. Clip number 8, please. Sorry about that.
What happened with him? Is he okay?
Yeah, I think he's gonna be okay. And then my friend, he was like laying on top of me, like making sure I was safe, and he got hit. So that was really brave of him.
And you have a neck on your neck?
Yeah, that was, I don't even know what it's from. Kind of looks like debris or something.
But that came from during this?
Yeah.
How are you feeling? You seem pretty put together here, but it's got to be tough.
Yeah, I'm just like confused.
How sad, confused. He may have shrapnel in his neck. He could have a piece of the window. I hope he does get checked out. But his story is so important because I heard this multiple times watching different interviews. The older children got on top of the younger children. Teachers got on top of the young children. We know they're our most precious gift from God, and we have to protect them. Are we at the time, Michael, that we need guards now at our churches?
I think we are. I think we are, because at this point, until we get the transgender issue and a lot of the, I mean, there are a lot of other ideologies out there that are inimical to civilization itself. And until we get those elements out of the country and out of civilization, meaning they're in prison or they're in institutions, whatever it takes, until that happens, the violence is only going to get worse. And I would also encourage people, especially Catholics, the time is now to do acts of reparation, to make penance.
Yes.
You know, we've got.
Yes.
We have to pray.
Can you elaborate on that, Michael?
Well, Our Lady in 1917 appeared to 3 small children in Fatima, Portugal, and she gave her precept for what must happen in order for us to come out of this crisis. She predicted the crisis. She predicted a Second World War. This is in 1917, before World War I even ended. But she said she asked the children to make reparations for blasphemies, outrages, and sacrileges that are committed. And she also exhorted people to pray the rosary daily, to wear the brown scapular, to make the 5 first Saturdays of reparation for the sins committed against the Immaculate Heart. Unless we do those things, we can't really expect things to change. And I highly recommend that we start doing it now, and we start doing it as an entire church in this country.
Wow. See why you're my favorite guest, or one of my favorite guests? You always have such great information, and I personally love to learn from you. I thank you for taking the time to join me on this really sad day, but you actually gave me a little comfort that we can get through this. We can become better, and there is hope. I know the bishop there spoke tonight, and he said there is hope. And Pope Leo, you know, obviously too, said he was saddened, but he has hope that we will get through this and we will be better for it. So,
Amen.
Thank you, Michael. Boy, this day couldn't end quick enough, right? It's just every time I would work a little bit, turn on the television to hear a little bit more and see those innocent souls. And we've had school shootings where they weren't transgender, but in every time there was mental illness. And I know there are people questioning what we give to young people. The antidepressants, the bipolar medications, does this cause them to be any more violent? I don't know the answer to that, but it was raised by some professionals today, and I think we need to take that into account as well. Looking totality at the school shootings that we've had, it's always somebody who's not quite right? Nobody in their right mind is going to shoot a child. When I was going to Catholic schools growing up, we really looked up to, is the right word? We really elevated the child, because the child is so innocent. And when evil wants to do anything against society, they go for that most innocent. Look at, they hailed abortion at 9 months in New York. That was Cuomo. The crazy people. The former governor of Virginia, who was a doctor, by the way, said they could go ahead and deliver. We'll put the baby on like a table, and then the mom can have a conversation and decide whether she wants to murder the baby. Like, it got so out of hand. We've got to swing this pendulum back to God. Well, stay with me because I have a hero story coming up after this short break.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
Welcome back to the Dr. Maria Show. If you've been watching, you know in the first half of the show, we recapped what happened today at Annunciation Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We need to have a big conversation. Mental illness, transgenderism, how we treat transgenders. And I don't mean we need to treat them kinder. We should treat all human beings kind. I love them like I love anybody else, but I do know most of the time their mental health issues were not treated correctly. There appeared to be an ideology, even in the medical field. I couldn't believe it. It happened remotely to me. One of my granddaughters went to see a doctor, and all of a sudden she's talking about sending her to a hormone clinic. Yeah, you picked the wrong nut to go after my child. But it's just this weird thing that's happening that we've got to fix, and we've got to purge the healthcare system out of this destruction. We talk about how healthcare went awry with vaccines not telling the people the truth. The fact that most of the vaccines on the schedule never got proper research testing. We talked about the lies with the mRNA, the lies during pandemic. So we're not doing really well as a healthcare system to build trust, right? As my husband will always say, I'm never going to go to a doctor. All they'll do is order tests to pad their pocket. He's very cynical because of a past story, but we need to get it back in healthcare to really take care of people. And sometimes there's hard truths. To sit with a child and say, no, you're not a boy, you're a little girl, and you know what? You're a beautiful girl, and you are feeling confused, and give them tasks to go forward, to not feel isolated, suggest different sports or knitting circles to get involved with. I'm just throwing things out. But you have to have a plan to help these children get out of these ruts. Well, such a sad story today, of course, in Minnesota, but I was happy to come across a hero story. I love those. In John Rudat, 21-year-old American, I believe he's a New Yorker, was in Germany, and he helped a woman. This is what we want all men to do, right? There's all this talk about, and I don't even understand I don't know what is what, but a man should be a man and protect women and children, right? Well, let's listen to John talk about it here in clip 13.
In a little bit, Into the tram ride, a man came on and started to harass the young lady and another lady that was present. Now that young man raised his voice, he assaulted the lady, grabbing her, throwing her around. She stood up, he grabbed her, hit her with a closed fist and threw her down on the chair. That is when I saw it fit to intervene to maintain and respect her safety, trying to de-escalate the situation. I reached out my hand to the man, trying to push him backward, keeping distance between me and him and her. We had a slight altercation and exchange, which led to him trying to continue to attack me even after I had maintained distance and reached out my hands, open hands, and trying to protect the young lady. Subsequent to that, a man had, unbeknownst to me, come around the corner on my right, and I just looked to the side after I heard a slight click. The knife went right over my face. I stepped backwards and my entire hand was red when I touched my face, and that's when I knew I had been brutally cut. I'm doing good. The couple days after the knife attack have been really busy, really trying, and a lot's been going on, a lot's been restructuring. A lot of people have reached out to me recently and given me so much support, especially from the citizens of Dresden, and it's so deeply appreciated. I feel great, no pain, I'm confident, I'm proud of this scar, and you know, I'm happy, I'm here.
Was bleibt nach so einer Tat?
Of course, that's when he was in Germany. I do believe he may be back in the United States, and we have other pictures to show you. He does have a scar, and he's a model, but he'll do fine. He's a good human being. Yeah, that's one of his modeling pictures, but we have some pictures of him after the attack. There we go. And I just have so much respect that he jumped in to save a woman and a child, and or a child if need be. You know, I just think that's really important. In another interview, he talked about the broken, guess what, illegal alien situation in Deutschland, in Germany. I really believe Angela Merkel ruined that country with that open border, bringing in all these Syrian refugees. You wouldn't believe the statistics of rape gangs now, mostly by Syrians or Muslim men in Sweden, London, Germany. It's really tragic. Norway. But here he is, because this illegal alien was known to police and he was a drug dealer. But listen to John in clip number 14.
Originally, I had went to Germany to visit my guest father. I had spent a year abroad here in Dresden in 2022 to 2023, and I fell in love with the city from the second I got here. Now, that's also separate to the last 10 years, as I've been told since the accident. I've had hundreds of people reach out to me and give me the claims and their stresses about over the last 10 years. The immigration problem and the violence problem has been really rising and becoming a legitimate threat to everyday safety. People nowadays tell me that they are afraid to use the tram, and understandably so. Look at my face. I completely understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, indeed, John, and extremely brave what you did stepping in for those two women there. Do you have sympathy for people such as President Trump, who is on a mass deportations plan right now? He's claiming he had 0 illegal migrants entering the United States. Do you think these are the right policies and that Europe should be adopting similar policies?
I think that the German people would really appreciate some policies like that. I think the German people would really appreciate being able to feel safe on their own transportation systems. And I hope that Germany and the government of Germany and the people of Germany push for exactly that, more policy for more safety.
And John, were you shocked when you were you overwhelmed perhaps when you saw Germany and when you got to Dresden and you saw the fabric of the society? Was something about that shocked you and saw these two women being assaulted? Was that a surprise to you here for seeing that here in Europe?
It was definitely a surprise to me. I never expected that night to turn into this, and I never expected to have to delay all the trips I had planned with my host father for the genuine visit I came here for, just to see Europe and the beauty of Europe. I never expected to spend that time in a hospital bed.
Indeed. John, could you just briefly give me the circumstances that led to you intervening with these two women as well, if you don't mind sharing it?
Of course. So I had entered the tram with my host brother and my friend, and we took seats right next to a woman at the time that was later going to be the one that was assaulted by that initial man. The man came over, started disturbing her, started harassing her, touching her. I stood up, intervened, vocalized the fact that I did not approve of what he was doing. I told him to stop. And at the time, my friends translated the language that I couldn't necessarily understand at the time in the tone that the man, the aggressor, was really stating it in, that they were getting through something or talking to each other about some problem. I sat back down. I was okay. I wasn't there looking for a fight. I wasn't there to start any conflicts. But when the woman stood up and the man came back yelling and screaming, he grabbed her, hit her with her fist, threw her down on the seat, and that's when I knew I had to intervene, and I did. I tried to maintain distance by extending my hand against the man, and he took that as a threat to violence and proceeded to hit me, and then I exchanged blows with him. He retreated backward. I tried to maintain distance, stay with my hands open, trying to protect the woman. She was my main priority, and her safety was my main priority. But he continued to try to attack me, and at that time I heard a quick click. I looked to the right, and I saw a man that I had never seen before with a brutal expression on his face lift up his hand and cut me over the face with a knife.
John, were you expecting a knife to be pulled on you in this situation? Was that a big surprise as well?
It was definitely a big surprise. I never expected any time that I get on the tram and have to get into a knife altercation with somebody, because I'm in Europe. I know that people don't do that here, or at least Europeans don't. And I never had to deal with that problem before while I was here in 2022 to 2023. But since then, I've noticed firsthand and had to experience firsthand that this problem is only getting worse.
I think we're conditioned, because we are the melting pot here in the United States, to think there's good and bad in all people, right? There's some bad white people, there's some bad black people, there's some bad Asian people, whatever, right? There's some, whatever it is, good and bad in all people, but you got to accept and try to accept. I have to say there's a little bit difference with Muslims, and a lot of that is in their radical faith. Have you heard that the Quran is peaceful? If you have and you believe it, you haven't read it. It's very, very disturbing, especially the part with Muhammad in there. Muhammad is definitely a pedophile, and he calls for hatred. In that radical religion, everywhere people from Syria went, there was trouble. That's why Egypt didn't want them. When they went into Lebanon, they ruined Lebanon, started killing Christians. And then there was that mass migration throughout Europe. And like I said, rape statistics are through the roof. They don't respect other human lives. They don't respect women. They don't respect their laws. As a matter of fact, in a previous show of the Dr. Maria show, a guest from London told me there were 52 illegal Sharia law courts. That means if you don't like what your wife has done, you could shoot her in the head. You could behead her. You could stone her. I mean, it's gotten out of hand. Do I believe that some Muslims see the faith and denounce that? There are. But right now, there's this gang, there's this thing of taking over. Their whole goal to have lots of children outbirth us and come our way. I feel Europe has gotten the brunt of the radical Muslims who just hate anybody who's white. More we've seen here, yes, we've seen some Muslims come in. We've seen people from 150 different countries come in, but our suffering is mainly by the Mexican cartels and how evil they are. And they too hate women. And that's how they get you to be subservient, right? To go after your women, and guess who else? Your children. Well, President Trump's been on a roll. You know, he has authority in the District of Columbia for policing, and he did bring in the National Guard, and things are going really well. There's been a number of arrests. I don't know, hundreds of illegal guns taken off the street. But here's the problem. You arrest them, what to do with them? There's not enough judges to process them. And I don't have this clip. I wish I did have this clip for you. One of the gentlemen who was arrested, He's got the handcuffs on. He's saying to the camera, I'm just going to be let go. 6 times I've been arrested and the judge doesn't show up. So you always got to look at the system of things and where the gaps are. So right now we got enough people arresting bad guys, getting them off the street, but we don't have anybody to process them. And the courts aren't quite up to snuff. So the Trump administration, the Department of Justice really needs to start hiring some additional judges. And I know people have been demoralized. They didn't want anything to do with the last Department of Justice, but we've got to get the system right to move forward. I want to show you clip 18.
Well, I'm glad they're cracking down on crime. That's all I can say.
I feel a lot safer, so I'm actually really happy.
I feel like the nation's finally becoming safe again with this, so it's nice that he has our backs and he's protecting us.
I think extra security is always a good thing, especially in the metro. I mean, if you got crime, you need police, you need extra protection out there. I don't have a problem with it.
And Coley, those right there are the opinions that matter.
Right. And Bill, from your outstanding reporting in LA.
So as you can see, D.C. residents are very happy with President Trump. I've seen a number of clips, some gentleman saying, oh, God, it's great to walk to work and I don't have to smell weed. Another woman saying, I can roll down my window. I can't believe it. It's great. Or, oh, I can walk to my car and feel safe. In the clips I've seen are mainly Black people. Why is this important? I'm not a race baiter. But remember in 2020, all that BLM stuff in the BLM riots, violent riots of 2020 that the media was calling peaceful. And there was that Marxist organization who took money from you and they bought themselves mansions. They didn't give a care about Black lives. The government of Chicago, the mayor and governor don't care about Black lives. You have to look at people and how they saved more Black lives. Rudy Giuliani in New York City, during his mayoral time, he was credited by saving more Black lives than any other mayor, governor, president in our lifetimes. How did he do it? Correct policing. Where did the people want the police? Where the crime was happening. And that's what he did. And that's what President Trump is doing. He's taking a page out of Rudy Giuliani's book. Now, citizens from Chicago have been writing the Department of Justice, have been writing President Trump saying, look we got this loser mayor, this loser governor. We're dying. My kids are being shot in the streets. Please come. So that may be a next step. I don't know about that legally. I've brought this up before. I just know he had definitely constitutional right to do this in DC. So I'll have to look that up. I probably said that before and see what kind of rights he has to bring in National Guard in other states. But can you imagine if we really cleaned up our country and we felt safe to go places? I mean, there's definitely places I have no intention of going because they are so unsafe. And unfortunately, there's parts of Texas that you're at high risk of being kidnapped by a cartel or murdered or raped. I'm not going to go there. There's certain parts of New York I won't step foot in, and forget California, Los Angeles. That Governor Newsom has ruined that state. Well, we're getting ready for our 250th year of the birth of our nation next year. And you know me by now. I love my country. I love everything about it. And I also like to look at wars and strategy. And so, I know a lot about World War I, World War II, our Civil War. I used to go and walk on the battlefields and really try to understand what, and this is what gets me mad about rhetoric from some people, some Black people who say, you owe me reparations. Are you kidding me? More white men died freeing the slave. And if you really want to look at a party that continued it, look at the Democrat Party and who also started the KKK because they didn't like it that the Northerners won, the Republicans won that Civil War. But anyways, so I'm kind of refreshing my memory on certain things. I love to bring guests who come to my home to the Freedom Trail in Boston. So I went there this past weekend, very hot, but took one of their tours. It didn't go to all the sites, but you did see the Granary Cemetery. And here's the pictures here. And you will see some of our massive heroes like James Otis. He was so much of a revolutionary, a strong man. Samuel Adams. We were joking that a lot of people, young people, might think Samuel Adams. That's a John Hancock. John Hancock ended up being, he was president of the Second Continental Congress, and he's the one with a very big signature on the Declaration of Independence. And some say, oh, he wrote his signature very big so King George would see it. And others say most documents only had to be signed by the president of the Continental Congress. So that's why he signed it kind of prominently. But anyways, great patriot. And there's our Samuel Adams. I got this thing about Samuel Adams. He was quite a rebel rouser. He was in the Sons of Liberties, certainly maybe even a founder of the Sons of Liberty. And he helped orchestrate the Boston Tea Party. And he's a cousin of John Adams, but he was quite a provocateur. And after the revolution, he became the 4th governor of the state of Massachusetts. These men are just incredible heroes of ours. I can't quite read that one, but it is an absolutely great cemetery. There's 2 that I encourage you to visit. The Granary, which these pictures are from the Granary in this little film, very old slabs from the 1700s. And then the other one is King's Cemetery that I encourage you to see. So there was our guide dressed up in colonial fare. Now, you may not remember that Ben Franklin was born in Boston, born and raised in Boston. A lot of people, say Ben Franklin synonymous with Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yes, he did go there. But he was an indentured servant to his uncle, I believe, in a printing press. And he was an intern and he was to learn the trade, but it was indentured for 7 years. And I think around 16, he had enough of that. He was mature, forward thinker, and he wanted to print things his way. He wanted to move forward. So he left Boston and went to Philadelphia and made his mark there. His parents are buried in that Granary Cemetery. I can tell you now's a good time to go and visit, especially in the month of September, because the summer months, it is so busy. And remember, Boston being a colonial town in the beginning, the streets are narrow, the sidewalks are very narrow. A lot of these places is old Boston, so it's cobblestone streets. And when it's crowded, it's a little tough. And plus, in September, if you go and visit these sites, you can also go to some of the festivals in the North End. We have St. Anthony Festival coming up, and it's a lot of fun, good food, a really remarkable place that honors their Roman Catholic existence. So I do thank you for joining me. Let's all band together to think about solutions for our schools and keeping our children safe. Should we take the money that was saved from the corrupt agency, USAID, and fortify our schools? I mean, we have to do something, and these things cost money. I'm willing to use some of my taxpayer. Like, I'm willing to say, okay, I want to get rid of half the people on welfare so we can protect the children. But we've got to come up with some solutions. And I'm telling you, gun control, the bad guys will always get the guns, right? The guns that were taken off the street in DC were not law-abiding citizens. They were the bad guys. So there was always going to be guns, always going to be knives. But how do we protect those children? And we need fortification of schools and now churches. New York City, I see private duty cops out protecting all the synagogues as well. I'm sad it came to this, but we can't just do nothing. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you again on Friday.